There we go. Things should come online here. Fantastic. Good morning. It is February 1st, 2018. My name is Jeff Fritz. Welcome back to the live stream. I'm in a different place today. I'm at CodeFellows in Seattle. I'm still here in the Emerald City, and we're going to be live coding, answering some questions from some of my friends here at CodeFellows, which is a great place to learn how to be a developer. They have offices in Seattle. I thought I saw Chicago, a bunch of different places. Check them out. They did me a great favor today. Big thanks to Amanda Iverson for getting me set up here, so I had a good connection and I could chat with you and talk a little bit about .NET coding today. So, big thanks to CodeFellows. I'm not wearing a hat. Oh my gosh. What am I doing? That's better. All right. Gotta wear my Eagles hat. 3 days? 4 days to the Super Bowl? We're gonna win this thing. My boys in green are going to win. I'm looking forward to this. We're going to beat those fellas from Boston. It's going to be a great game. All right. This is going to be fun today. We're going to go through. I want to spend some time answering some questions that I received about identity in ASP.NET Core. We haven't really touched on the topic of security, and security is kind of a tricky thing. How to configure it, how to deal with authentication, authorization. And I want to show some quick samples to make it a little bit clearer. As developers. So, Jürgen Guch, thank you for the follow. I appreciate you joining us. I look forward to seeing some questions here in the chat room. Music is higher than the mic. All right, we'll dial that down. How's that? Is that a little bit better, DJ Vortex? I've got a little bit of an echo because I'm in a closed, they call it a phone booth here. Much better, I hear from Tagarong. Fantastic. All right. So I did receive a number of pull requests here. Let's go over to our code. There I am. I do have a number of pull requests that came in for our stream tools. Let's take a quick look at those. I'm not going to merge these yet because I want to get to our questions first, and then I'll come back over and we can look at these. So there's some more unit tests from Jay Rosegard here on configure services, how we configure and build our application. Fixed save load of BG blend values and tidied up the layout. And what I think is also interesting about this is, if I read the comment correctly from SQL Mr. Magoo here, so much fun to say that. Demand 386. Let's go, Pats. I don't know about that. I like this. If we fix the rendering in Edge. Okay, cool. That's great. Support for Edge is a great thing. And then another pull request to allow you to choose fonts from Google Fonts. So this one looks pretty interesting, and I want to make sure I give it enough time to really look at it. So I might not get to it in today's stream. We might look at it on Saturdays, but I'm really excited to look into these pull requests, and I want to be sure that I give them each the attention and respect that they're due. But I want to make sure I get to some of these questions that I've been receiving around ASP.NET Core security. Taking a quick look at the counters here, 600. It says 621 followers, but I've got 623 on my follower, right on the follower goal up at the top for helpme.net. That's strange. watch the Pats lose as the Seahawks are out. Go Eagles! Yes, thank you. I'm not quite sure why my numbers aren't lining up there. That's confusing. Let me see if I can see what else is going on here. Yeah, this followers number here isn't updating properly. The follower count. I'm going to force a refresh of that. And there it goes. Now it's pulling. You know what? I bet you it's not pulling the SignalR client properly. I'm willing to bet that's what it is. Let's see if there's a bug in that I can fix real quick and publish. And we can get that count fixed. All right. Hello world from Live Unicorn. Hello. Welcome. Well, welcome Unicorn. I never had a unicorn in my chat room before. All right, here we go. I want to take a look and see. So that the followers count up at the top there, that is actually from this ASP.NET Razor view. And if I scroll down here, so it's referencing my SignalR class library, but it doesn't look like it's refreshing properly. So I think I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time debugging this. It's not something I'm going to be able to quickly just say, oh, I'm missing a script, and it just works. If I take a look at my app settings, I have my fake stream provider set up so that if I don't have Twitch or Mixer, this will just start counting, and it should tick over the number of followers. And I'm actually going to shorten this update followers interval so I can get that number ticking more quickly. I'll set it to 3 seconds. I'm just going to start this, and I just want to see if it is working properly, because like we saw here in the live video, the number wasn't counting for us. So let's just take a quick look. If it is working here, I'm just going to skip over it and move over. Coffee Unicorn, I see over there in the Twitch chat room. Now, I'm not getting... Yeah, Restream's having a problem connecting to Twitch chat right now, but I am seeing it on both here. I'm going to force a refresh on that chat bar. Let's see. There we go. All right. Now, didn't this start running? There we go. All right. Let's take a quick look. So configure Twitch, configured Mixer. Ginger Solid. Welcome, Ginger Solid. Let's see. Now I'm going to go to followers count. I look forward to hearing from you in the chat room, Ginger. All right. So it is counting up. It is properly responding. Actually, yep, there it is. It's still counting up. Okay, good. So this looks like it's working properly. It might have been a one-time thing here embedded in the stream. So I'm going to put to bed my concerns there around how that's operating. So I want to come back to these pull requests a little bit later, but first I want to go over and I want to talk a little bit about identity in ASP.NET Core. So let's close this solution. Okay. Can we have volume increased a notch? I have my volume all the way up, and my microphone is broadcasting. So, RP Gamer, welcome. Let me just check. Yeah, my mic is all the way up. Let me check over here on my headset. Yeah, of course. Skype likes to reset levels on me. No. Come on, configure. I want the properties on my microphone here. Is that better? How's that sound? How does my mic sound now? We good? Test, test. Looks like I'm hitting my normal levels. Let me know in the chat room. Alright. Better. Alright, good. I'll even pull the desktop audio down just a little bit. Okay. Dismiss that. Seems fine. Good. So, let's talk a little bit about security in ASP.NET Core. And I'm going to go after the ASP.NET Core 2.0. So I'm going to go down to .NET Core. ASP.NET Core web application. I don't like this folder. I don't want to write in that folder. I write to my dev folder. And let's call this security demo. All right, and I'm going to choose Razor Pages for this one. No, you know what? Let's do MVC. And I'm going to set authentication to individual user accounts. Now, this lets you choose the way you want to configure, how you want to store your user accounts. I could connect to an existing store somewhere else if I wanted to, or I can store them in-app, which effectively will create a SQL Server database because I'm running here on Windows, and allocate some space there to store all of my user information. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to store it in-app. Of course, you can choose to use this option, which will allow you to choose a Azure Active Directory and how that's configured so you can fetch login information from there. Or, of course, you can use Windows authentication and use standard Active Directory, right? On-premises Active Directory. Which means that all of the configuration for your roles, for your claims, is coming from somewhere else when you use either this configuration or the Windows authentication configuration. But I'm going to choose individual user accounts, and I'm going to use that because it's a little bit more raw. I have to actually allocate and build up the different things that I need for my application and how I want to authenticate and authorize users to access things. So, and those are two very important things there that we need to make sure we understand the difference between, right? Authentication is, am I who I say I am, right? Do I have a proper login and password to access the application? And authorization is, am I allowed to access this feature? So key difference between those two items. Now, inside this application by default, we have some things that are built for us, these account view models and some manage view models. This is all a bunch of stuff to help define exactly what a user is, how a user logs in, and how they interact at a security level with the application. Not so much, right, encrypting things, and then this is passing that user information around, all right? I got to get more coffee into me. Okay. Actually, side note, I had a great dinner last night with my friend Suze Hinton. She's another streamer, does an amazing job with JavaScript and IoT devices. She streams on Sundays. I had a great kind of meeting of the minds for how to stream better between the two of us. So really cool stuff. I was very happy to have some time to talk and learn a little bit from her yesterday. So thank you. Thank you, Suze, for that. All right. Let's take a look. All these view models interact with these controllers, right? I have an account controller, I have a manage controller, and the home controller still does those home controller things, right? Index, about, and contact, right? These are your three basic pages that come in the standard ASP.NET Core application template, right? They're kind of boring, to be honest. The account controller is where we're going to do things to manage how you can interact with your account, right? You're going to log in. You're going to log in with two-factor authentication or maybe a recovery code, or you're going to register as a new user, okay? External login callback. So if you're logging in and you want to log in with your Microsoft account, it would call these methods. Confirmation, sure. Confirm email, forgot your password. These things that you kind of expect out of a security interaction. Did I miss the 8-hour live stream I was talking about? Is the question from Live Unicorn. No, I'm working with a number of folks to nail down a schedule, to nail down the exact contents, because I'm going to be pair programming live with all kinds of folks during the stream that day, and it's taking a little bit of coordination. I'm going to try and make it for next week. For next week, if I get the availability from everybody, I'm going to try and do it here the 9th or the 10th. So I'm actually sending emails later today to confirm those dates and start locking down content with folks. So it is coming very soon, Live Unicorn, I promise. It just takes a little bit of coordination, building, and I actually have most of the content already, but um, building and preparing for that kind of stream, right? These live streams that I do, um, I have pretty much a skeleton framework of here's what I'm going to talk about, and I do a lot of let's figure this out as we go. But for something that's going to be that long, I want to make sure that I I present a good quality level and that I have a good pace and a good set of content that I'm going to focus on. So fantastic. Thank you for the comments, Live Unicorn. I appreciate that. All right. Let's see here. Let's. So these are all the things to create your account, right? And there's also the manage controller over here. And this one, let's collapse up these things, right? This one allows you to do things once you have an account to manage it, right? You want to change your password. You want to set a new password. Um, External logins, right? You're logging in from somewhere else. Right, you're using Microsoft account, Google account, Facebook account to log in. You can configure those things here. Um, Two-factor authentication to actually do the two-factor authentication, right? Enabling that authenticator. So simple things here, and then even generating a QR code to allow you to do your um, two-factor authentication. All right, so kind of makes sense what's going on here. Now, what I want to talk about is a little bit around roles and claims, which get set up and kind of allocated when you're over here in the account controller and you register, right? So when I register, when I go to the register page, it's going to go to literally a page, okay? But then when it actually posts and creates the user, right? So we're adding somebody into our application. And it kind of makes sense here. Create a new application user and create that asynchronously in our user manager object. Right now, the user manager is what's actually interacting with the database, right? It's the one that is actually doing that SQL Server insert statement behind the scenes inside this thing. Continuing, if it did succeed in saving that, it's going to generate email confirmation tokens. If you have that configured, it'll go and do this. Email confirmation link, okay, right? Send confirmation email. So the email sender by default, let me see if I can show you. It actually doesn't do anything. If you want to enable all of those things, you would actually hook this up to send an email, hook it up to a service maybe like SendGrid that will transmit those emails for you. So real easy for you to add that feature, and it's already configured here, and it's actually trying to do it when someone registers. It's just literally at the point that it sends, it's just saying, okay, I sent, and doesn't do anything. Of course, once you're done registering, you should sign in, and then it redirects you to wherever it is that you were browsing to on the application. This is the first Starbucks I've had since I've been in Seattle this week. It's my 4th day in Seattle, and it took me this long to get to a Starbucks. That's like criminal in this town. Oh my gosh. Anyways, and of course, if it doesn't succeed, let's add some errors. So how can we define some roles like an admin, right? Or a power user, or somebody who has write access? How can I define roles like that? And what are claims, right? I've heard a little bit about claims inside of this. So claims are security significant properties of a user. And I'll go further to explain that somebody's hair color, while, okay, that might be something important for their profile, particularly if you're a hair salon, that might be important. It's not science, it's not security important, right? We're not going to block somebody from accessing our system because they're blonde, right? That you're not going to do that. I hope you're not going to do that. But we're when we think further about that, some things that might be significant might be like birth date. If your organization has vehicles, right? If you work at a company that has vehicles and you have to be 23 in order to drive the company vehicle, you might put a security restriction on that. So, okay, birth date might be something important. Your location, right? We're going to allow folks to access the um, we we're not going to allow some folks to access the West Coast data center properties if they're on the East Coast. And I'm noticing here, Nifix, yeah, stop spamming symbols. That was a lot of symbols in there. I get it. So it was just a warning from Nightbot. No big deal. See, Nightbot sometimes gets a little eager on the censorship there. Censorship on the moderation. So, um, but I know you folks understand. I'm not trying to be overzealous here in how we moderate the chat rooms. So how do we manage? How do we put the roles in here? And how do we put claims in here? So right away, this register doesn't do anything to assign folks to a role. It literally just creates the user. In fact, if I run this application, and I'm going to run it from Kestrel instead of from IIS, this is going to it's going to prompt me to create the database when I go to register for the first time. Let's take a look. So this will start, and there's my website. So I'm going to register. So give me an email, jeff@jeffreyfritz.com. Give me a password, and of course I need. Oh my gosh, look at this. Space Shot, thank you so much for hosting. Fritzbot should need to have it. You like the sound of that, Janescu. Nightbot's being rude. Sorry. Let's create a password, and it will be, of course, password 1234, because that's how I roll. And when I click register, I need a. So I will do password point 1234. How's that? Now this should error out. There it is. Right. So this is the error page that Entity Framework generates for you that says, oh, your database schema isn't up to date yet. And instead of forcing you out to some console, it gives me a cool button that I can just build the schema right here. Yeah, here we go. So this will go through, it'll create the database, and then it'll actually finish doing my update. Looks good. Try refreshing the page, resend, and it works, and now I'm logged in, jeff@jeffreyfritz.com. Easy, right? That's the way it should work. Now when I want to start creating roles, and I want to define claims, I need somewhere to define those things, right? And on my profile here, I've got a phone number field. If we look at that phone number field, that's going to be coming in on the manage controller, right? Because I'm here on manage index, all right? So let's take a look at index and when it's posted back, when it actually saves it. All right, so if the email changes, we're going to set the email. The phone number, if the phone number is different, we're going to set the phone number on our user manager. Okay? And if it doesn't work, we'll throw an appropriate error message. But I want to set some other information about my person here, and I want to set a role. Now, roles don't exist in the database by default. Let me see if I can do it. Browse to the database here. SQL Server Object Explorer. Let's see if I can pop this up here. So this is actually connecting. I'm going to show you down here in App Settings. right? So by default, it creates a connection to SQL Local DB, and it's going to ASP.NET Security Demo, and then some ugly GUID. So SQL Local DB, I'll go into Databases, and ASP.NET Security Demo. Here it is. So let's look at the tables. Here are the tables that it creates by default. What happened here? J. Roseguard, are you dependent on Entity Framework or can use another ORM like Dapper.net? By default, Identity hooks up through Entity Framework. I suppose you could use a different ORM if you'd like, but this is the default external database security that comes with Identity. If you use those other those other storage providers, right? Azure Active Directory, regular Active Directory, or some other third party, it doesn't actually use Entity Framework to integrate with those. And that's a shame Nightbot came down on thinking that was a link. But you should, if you want to write your own user manager, you should be able to do that and configure it to use another database if you'd like. But you're going to have to write a little bit of code to kind of replace what's already there. It's not something you can just drop in. So our databases that we have here that it created for me, I have my users, let's take a look at exactly what's in this so you know what's here, right? So here's my users, and there's my email address right there, and some other information about me. Right, so if we look at the columns that are here, access failed count, a concurrency stamp, my email, if my email was confirmed because I did a click-through link. Am I talking about my channel or the platforms in general? Whoops. Let's see. So you need some custom adapters. You would need a custom... let's see, what do we have here? I'm a Meat Popsicle. There's, how you doing there, Meat Popsicle? Identity Dapper on GitHub. There you go. Right, you should be able to drop that in if it is what I think it is, and get that swap out. But you're going to end up effectively with these same database tables. All right, so these are the different things that kind of allow us to have a user, and there's our phone number in there. And then we have, roles. Right, so let's look at that data. And I'll open up these columns so you can kind of see what's here. A concurrency stamp, a name, and a normalized name, right? Literally, to the database, a role is just a string. There's nothing fancy to it, okay? Because you're going to hook up and say, is this person in this role? Now, we can do things like say, this role has claims, okay? And, so you have a claim type, this is the name of the claim, and then the value that everybody in this role gets. Not bad. I can grok that, right? I can understand that. And the user roles table very simply has the mapping from user to role because users can belong to multiple roles. All very simple. Finally, the last one I want to take a look at here is user claims, right? So a user has a claim type, which is just a string, and then a value that is associated with that. Can I gronk that? Oh, Chris. That's a Patriots joke for the Super Bowl this weekend. Claim. What's the definition of a claim? So, and Amanda, and I think I know who Amanda is. I think that's Amanda here from CodeFellows. So, a claim is I refer to it as a security significant property of a user, right? So those are the not rights that a user has, but the claim, like I said, a birth date is a claim if that's something significant to the security of your application. Um, if uh, um, your location, if you have multiple offices, right, that location might be security significant. That would be a claim. Your badge ID number, that would be something that's significant for security enforcement, right? That could be a claim. So Amanda's right. You have roles, you have claims, and then you have claims that are automatically assigned to people who belong to a role. That's not bad. Okay. So, right, uh, and it, funny enough, a role is nothing more than just a specific type of claim called, I believe it's called role, and it's just a string. So when you see that mapped and passed back and forth, it kind of lines up and plays the same way. Let's start defining some of these things and actually get into some concrete examples here. So I'm already logged in. I've already got a user out here. So what I'm going to do is, just to make sure that my user is created and I can, you know what? No, let's put it on the page. Let's do something that's a little bit more realistic. I'm going to go to, I don't need the SQL Explorer anymore. Let me go to my page. So here's my views, and I want to go to Manage, Index, right? So here, right here are the properties in my profile as a user. Let's add another property here for birth date, and just because, right? We here in the United States, right? There are laws around around when you can vote. There are laws around how old you have to be when you can drink alcohol. Um, so that might be important to our application. Oh, here's a couple comments in the chat room. Roles, I think, are more tightly tied to rights, and they didn't define what you could do. That's right. That's right. Neither one of these things, neither roles nor claims, really define what you could do, but they set a property on that user. You then go forth and you use the presence of those roles or claims in your application to test and either grant access or revoke access to various features in your application. So, excuse me, if we look at the Manage controller, right up top here, we use this authorize attribute by default. What this says is you have to be authorized, you have to be logged in order to access any feature inside of this. So Nifix, claims are possible properties of a user for authorization. Yes, that's a great way to put it. It's a property of a user that we want to be able to examine to determine whether they're authorized to use a feature. My voice is getting raspy here. My apologies. All right. Claims don't even have to be based on rights. A claim for a user could be your Mixer username. Sure. That's a great one. You decide that the presence of an administrator role means that you can do some powerful thing. Yes. Yes. Let's take a look at this. So you know what? Let's not do birth date on this. Let's do role, right? Let me just create a role block here. So I'm going to just create another div right here. So div class equals form group. I got that great IntelliSense from Visual Studio showing me that I'm using a Bootstrap class there. And I'm going to just call this role. I don't have a role on my object yet, but we'll create one. ASP4 role. We need to put a class on this. Form control, there it is. Right, you get that B glyph there to indicate that this is a Bootstrap. Get some stronger coffee. ASP validation 4 and role class equals text danger. Yeah, there we go. So now let me put a role property on my index view model. So I'm going to click on that and just punch F12. So I jump right to definition. I'll jump to my index view model over here. And I'm going to just create, rats, I have to stop the application. I'm going to create a property here. This is a string called roll. All right. Let's get everything lined up because I use 2 space tabs. Let's see. You decide the presence, and then with claims you get more granular support. Yes, you could say everyone who has a claim that they work in the mailroom can close issues in the mailroom help website. Great point, Chris. Yes. Now, right, some entity framework features here. This display attribute, whatever's in there is what will be rendered on that label for me. So let's put one of those in here. Display, and I'm just going to put assigned. That's not how you spell that. Assigned role. Fantastic. All right. Oops. Name equals. Gonna need that. There we go. So I now have a role here that my manage controller will know how to receive, right, in my index view model. Okay, that's good. So it'll receive that. And now I've got these other things down here that it's going to want to figure out what to do with. Now, instead of taking whatever's keyed in here and and going through user manager and doing something, I actually want to assign that role. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and let's create some space here. Let's see. You know what? I'm just going to say if not string is null or empty. User. No, it's model dot role. So I get the role that was keyed in. Right. Oops. Oops. Didn't go outside that. There we go. What's coming in here? Gotcha. Wife and kids, stuff going on back at the Fritz compound on the East Coast. All right. So if there is a role keyed in, we want to assign that role. But I don't want to just assign it blindly. I want to make sure that that role actually exists. So I'm receiving all kinds of properties here to allow me to manage folks here in my manage controller, and I actually need access to my role manager here. So I'm just going to insert right in the middle here. It doesn't really matter when I do this, but I'm going to create a role manager. All right. Now the role manager needs to take, right, a type of role. What the heck is that? So, right, all of our identity objects are extensible. So there's actually a, where's the models here? Models, right, account view models, there's the manage view models, but here's my application user, and it's just a regular identity user. I need to implement and specify, here's my role. So let's do that. Public class application role, identity role. Okay. Now I could define extra properties and things that I need to use for my identity role here, and if I needed that, but I don't really need to define anything extra here. So I'm just going to save that so that I now have a application role. All right, so I have now my application specific role object. Amanda asks, can you talk a bit about the sign-in manager and user manager? Great point. The user manager, this object here, right, is being injected from our dependency injection provider, and it's what is letting us manage and actually interact with, do do those repository-like actions, right? Our CRUD, our create, read, update, and delete interactions on the user, right? Those users. But our sign-in manager is what's letting us actually authenticate, right? It's doing that password check and make sure that you can sign in to the application, right? So if we take a look at where this is used, right? So it's stored in this sign-in manager object here, but I'm going to do a Shift F12 and see where it's being used, right? So you can see further down here. So when you change your password, I'm going to sign you back in again, right? I can actually do the sign-in process, the login to the application. I'm going to log in and resynchronize all that stuff. So that's easy, right? That kind of makes sense, right? Naming is typically hard in software, and so I like to give things simple names, and I think the folks building the identity system here gave this a sensible name, right? It's responsible for signing you in and signing you out of the application, right? So that's the difference between those. Good question. Thank you, Amanda. So I'm now receiving a role manager. Let me save a copy of that into a property here. So I'll just create a role manager and stash that away, and I'm going to control period on this, and I'm going to create a read-only field. Fantastic. There it is. Format that. I want my 2 spaces here. Alright, so there it is. So role manager, and there it is, private read-only role manager, right? Control period just generated that for me. So now I have a role manager. So let me go back down here to where I was actually working on saving that role, here on line 110. So now I can say role manager, and look at all the different things I can do with my roles here. Let me scroll that up a little bit, right? I can create a role, I can delete roles, I can find roles, get the claims that are associated with a role, right? And that clearly goes back to that table we saw earlier in database, right? ASP.NET role claims. That method gets the values out of that for the role that we request. But what I'm going to do, we can get access to all kinds of things in here. The complete list of roles that are available, right? But let's, is there an, I want to see if there's, does this exist, right? No. So let's do find by name. There we go. So let's find that role, right? Var the role equals that, and that is an async, so we should await that. Cool. If the role equals null, so if we didn't find it, we should throw an exception. Throw new application exception. The role model.role does not exist. That's pretty easy. So it would exit out at that point. But now I want to assign folks to that role. So I believe I can say the role dot, nope. Is it role manager dot, where is it to assign somebody to the role? Add to role. Here it is. It's on user manager. I got these confused a little bit. So add to role async, right? So I need to specify a user and then the name of the role to add them to, which we're already pretty well doing here. So my user is going to be just user and then model.role. All right. I don't actually need this role object here for anything. I'm just doing a check to make sure it exists. And of course it does want me to await that. So we'll go ahead and do that. So that's not too bad, right? I've got now a simple way to add folks to a role, but I better have the role in the database. So let's make sure that I create some roles and put them in the database to start. So what I'm going to do is in my, let's do it in configure services. No, wait. Let me do it down here in configure. Right, so I wanted this to fire only once when we start up the application. And I'm going to receive role manager of type application role. And I'll just call that role manager. I like that sensible default they give me for the name of the attribute. So after use MVC, so I'm just down here outside the configuration of the HTTP pipeline, because MVC is a terminator, right? It exists at the end of it. So I'm just going to say if role manager dot, oh look, role exists. Oh my gosh, I should be using that, shouldn't I? Let's do that here. Role manager, no. Role manager dot, I thought there was an exists. And then it was model dot role. Yeah, we'll do that. We need another paren at the end of that. So if it doesn't exist, right? Do I have that in the right place? I don't. Cool. And that looks really weird. Bang await like that. Oh my gosh. So if it doesn't exist, throw that error. But I'm going to come over here and say if and await admin. Right? Let's create an admin user. Now, why is that? The await operator. Oh, we're not in async method, so that's fine. We'll do that. Oh, I've got to do the whole jump back and forth because this is a task. Ugh. All right, all right. Let's just say task equals. Let me grab this thing here. So if yeah, t dot wait, t dot result, which should be, yep, it's a bool. So if not, come here. All right. So if it doesn't exist, we should create it. So role manager dot create async, and then the application role to create. So I'm going to just new up an application role. And it has really one property, name, and that is admin. I'll just create a normalized name of admin as well. Not bad, right? And I can fire and forget this. I don't really care about when this comes back. Let it do its thing. So I'll save that. So let's start and see what happens. So now we're creating a role. We have an admin role that should be created and saved in our database. We should see it happen right here in our console. Ooh boy, I broke it. Cannot resolve a service of type role manager, blah, 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 for the parameter. It should have been there. No service for type has been registered. Why didn't we get one? Where was it? Startup. Add entity framework stores, add default token providers. Ah! Application user, it's not identity role anymore. It's now application role that we're using to define our roles here. So let's try that again while that's starting. Are you automatically creating that role on startup then? This will always guarantee that the admin role exists. Yes. Alright. Cannot create a DB set for application role because this type is not included in the model for the context. Ah, alright. So that's pretty easy to understand. Um, so my context, where to go? Data, application DB context. It doesn't have a um, so identity DB context. It doesn't have. Yep, I can specify my specific role type here. And there is that identity role, and I'm not really adding value to it. By default, it's going to use identity role, it looks like. You know, why don't we just roll with that? So, you know, I'm going to back up and I'm going to just quickly change this to identity role, right? Can I convert from identity role to application role? That's fine. I'm going to go back up here and I'm going to change this back to identity role. All right. So this way, I'm not actually managing and creating that other type out there. Right? You could use this. I don't really need it because I'm not adding value. So my mistake. I didn't need it. So I'm going to come back into this one and change this to identity role. And there as well. All right. And all that still works good. No reds. Good. So this, I can change back to identity role. And you're right. So because I'm doing this check up front, it'll ensure that admin always exists. Now, of course, once it's in my database, I could probably comment out or remove this, but because this is a first-time setup, I need to create and store it in there. So let's see if this works now. All right, it flew by real quick. I want to make sure that you see this. I want to come back over here to the console. So look right here. It's checking to see if ASP.NET roles. It's looking to see if that role exists, okay? And it's not actually showing me the parameters here that it passed in, right? It's saying, does this exist? So it should have created it behind the scenes for us. So now let's go over. I'm already logged in. And this is absolutely not what you should do. You shouldn't have folks be able to say, yes, haha, I'm an admin. No, don't do that. I'm going to save. Now, the role admin does not exist. It didn't actually get into the database. That feels bad. Let's see, wouldn't it fit better into the DB context? Sure, right? I could absolutely add and define a new role in the DB context. It should live in the database. Exactly. It didn't create it in the database. I don't think this completed for me and it went out of scope. So I'm going to create another, right? This is the create task because I have to do this asynchronously, right? Create task dot wait. Make sure that finishes. Try this one more time, and then we'll look, and Amanda's right, we should see that role created in the database. And then we'll take a look at creating some claims and putting those in the database. So let's see, we should see an insert here. Select, here we go. ASP.NET user claims, select, right? I don't see the insert. Let's wander back over here, look in the database. Here's user roles. Let's view data. There it is. Right, there you go. So there's my admin role. And right, we put some sort of a ugly GUID in front of it so that we can uniquely pass that around. So there's my role. Now, let's go and add myself to the role. And of course, right, if I did this right. So admin, save. My profile has been updated. Now I don't think I have the roles being returned and placed properly into this. And that's a problem with my view, how I'm constructing that. But if we take a look at, where is it, ASP.NET user roles down here, right? So now we get kind of this double blind thing happening where, right, I can see there's a user assigned to a role, and we know that that's our only role, and I only have one user over here, right? So view data, and open this up, right? 1258, and if I go back over here, there he is, 1258. So we can clearly see that my user was assigned to a role, and it's stored here. And my view isn't loading that data properly right now, and that's because inside, not startup, inside, where'd my manage controller go? I'll do a control comma here and look at the manage controller. When it's building that index view model, I'm not actually assigning a role piece of information here for it to present. So let's just, for the sake of completeness and so you can see it fully working there, I'm going to take my role property and I'm going to say user dot, I should be able to say get roles, right? User dot, it's not right here. Is it in user manager? Get roles async, and it's going to return to me an iList of string, which, let's tinker with that. I'm going to await on that, and I want to do after the await, so I get the actual object, right? And I can await on this because this is an asynchronous method. I'm going to do a to array, and I want to do a string join on that. So that it looks like a comma separated list. There we go. Okay. Now if we try this again, it's going to check to see if the admin role exists, and since it does exist, oops, forgot a comma, it should just skip creating that role a second time. So here we go, security demos loading. It's going to do that check, right? And you can see it doing that check. Select top one to see if it exists. I'm into my application, and if I click here, it should show me, and now I have my assigned roles loaded. So now I'm passing roles back and forth, and really, when you assign roles, you probably want that hidden in an admin-only area of the application. So we've created an admin role. How do you create that admin-only area? And that really comes down to how do we enforce that only folks with certain roles are allowed to do certain things. So let's go back over to our code, and I'm going to stop this. And what I can do, just for the purposes of having something to kind of point to and say, there it is, I'm going to create an empty MVC controller, and I will call it admin controller. How hard is it to do all that identity stuff without entity framework? So to be clear, because you're interacting with user manager and role manager and sign-in manager, you're not actually touching entity framework directly, right? They're being handled behind the scenes underneath those things. If I actually look at, just to answer the question there from Mags, if I look at the definition for a user manager, there it is. So user manager is this object, right, that has all these different things. You can, and these are all virtual, you can implement your own user manager and pass that around to manage identity. And when you look in startup at how it's configured, so it does this add DB context so that it creates someplace to save that stuff. But it's the add identity here, you're defining these things. You can actually go through, there's other methods to configure and reference and use other objects to do your user manager and some of these other things. that's a little bit further into the weeds in how you build and set up identity than I'm want to go into today. I want to get into some of these basic concepts, but the it's this method changes. I forget how it changes when you're using um, some of the other storage providers, right? You are able to continue to use, I believe, user manager, sign-in manager, and role manager um, to interact with those other locations. Okay, but let me go through and finish showing this. And if we need to dig into that further, I can do that on another stream. I want to get past some of these concepts around enforcing some of that authorization. So I created an admin controller. How do I constrain access to this to only admins? Well, that authorize attribute that we saw earlier, authorize, and I'll control dot on that and make sure that I'm using the authorization framework. I can put parens here, and then I can actually specify. You see it there. It's the last item over here, roles. I can actually specify here's the role that folks are required to have in order to be able to access this. And I'm seeing that my video, my code is significantly behind. I have a video transfer card that's doing this for me, and it looks like it's falling way behind today. There we go. So you can see the roles there. So I can actually say roles equals and then provide a comma separated list of roles that you need to participate in order to access this. Now, that comma separated list, if I remember correctly, is logically ORed together. Okay, so it would be admin or power users or West Coast or right whatever else I wanted to punch in here as the different roles, and it would OR those different things together. The other options that you have in here are things like policy. We'll take a look at that in a minute. Authentication schemes, right, which are the schemes under which the user information is constructed. I don't want to dive into that today, but let me talk about the roles, I'll talk about claims, and I'll talk about policy. So I've specified authorize at the top of the controller here. So in order to do any action inside this controller, you need to be authorized as an admin role. Or you can override and specify on the methods you can specify things like allow anonymous and change the security scope in order to access this. So anybody can access the index page, but if I have something else down here, create users, right? If this doesn't have an attribute on it, this one will still enforce that you need to be an admin to access this page. There we go. Okay. So there's the couple different ways that you can do this. Let's answer that. Okay. So that's how you can enforce different roles. Now there was policies hanging out there, and a policy. Oh, let me come back to that question in a second, DJ Vortex. A policy is a way for you to declare different requirements for authorization in one place behind a string, and you create that policy inside your application, right? So we're building abstraction layers, right? We know in Unix-based systems, in Linux, you have groups, you belong to many groups, and your file access permissions, right? You have user, group, and other, right? There are those three groups of file access permissions. We're giving you the ability to abstract as much as possible here. If you just want to use roles, fantastic. But what if you wanted to have policies so that you could define that policy and enforce that policy on your controllers, and then you can change the requirements of that policy later? So there's that abstraction there, right? A policy defines roles, and claims you must have in order to be a member of that policy. Brooker, thanks so much for the follow. I appreciate that. And good morning, Steve. Always a pleasure seeing you here in the morning. Thanks for joining us. How'd the Clippers do last night, Steve? I don't think he's going to answer me. And Steve Ballmer, if you really are watching, let me know in the chat room. I'd love to say hello. So, all right, so DJ Vortex question is, if you want to do international roles, right? I believe that's what you're referring to with the I-18N. That's a shortcut for international. You're going to have to wrap them for any UI work. Yeah, you're going to need to do a little bit of wrapping to do some localization around that. All right. So you're going to want to do some wrapping around that, but as far as saving them to the database, the string you use here isn't actually being published unless you explicitly choose to publish it. Okay? These are, right, this is strictly a code concern. All right? It's up to you if you want to translate that, internationalize, localize it, however you want to go about that in your user interface. Oh, look at this. Brooker, see you at CodeFellows later today. I'm going to stick around for a little bit here. I'm gonna hang out at CodeFellows till about 10, and then I'm gonna see if I can even go a little bit later. So we'll see how that goes. All right. So roles. Now let's talk. Let's actually create a policy here, so I don't have to explicitly have the role here, because right, if folks come back later and say, you know what, we're not going to call our admins, we're going to rename them, and we're going to call them Big Cheeses, right? Or the boss, right? I like Big Cheese, right? Sure. My father was a longtime Unix administrator, and instead of using root to log on to all of his machines, he created as his power user, as his root equivalent, the Big Cheese user account. So that's kind of become a running gag for my family, is that your super user is Big Cheese. So anyways, right? Let's create a policy that says if you are a Big Cheese, you're allowed access to this. And what is a Big Cheese, right? I like a nice provolone. All right, let's go over to startup. Right, come on, chat room. What cheese do you like? I left that wide open for commenting there. All right, so services. When we define our policies, we add them to the dependency injection container so that it knows what these policies are. So if I remember correctly, it's services add authorization, and then I define my configuration for this. It's a cheese shop, sir. All right, so let's start configuring. What does this look like? So I'm going to say config, and I'm going to add a policy. All right, so let's add a policy, and the policy that we defined was called Big Cheese. And then I can either pass in a new policy, or I believe, where is it? I can fire a configurator to configure that policy. So let's do that. So I'm going to say policy, and let's go through another little anonymous configurator here. So I'm going to say policy, and then I can start to define the different things here. And I want to require the role admin in order for you to be considered a Big Cheese. And then I'll say policy build at the end of that so that it takes all of the requirements and puts them together. Pepper cheese, camembert, ooh. I totally like wasabi. There we go. Nifix has to go. Great job. Wish I could stay. No problem, Nifix. You know this will go out to YouTube a little bit later. So thanks so much for joining, and I'm glad I could cover authorization in some of these questions today, and I think this is something important that folks see and learn a little bit more about. So if I'm an admin, I now satisfy the big cheese policy, and I should be able to go into the admin controller, which we should create a view so that we can actually see that we got in there. So let's just create a dummy view. No, not there. I need to create a folder first that corresponds to my controller, right? Controllers, when they return views, by default, look for folders in views that have the same name as them. And then inside of that folder, I'm going to add a view, and I'll just create the index view. That's fine. All right, so it's going to go through and scaffold my index. Here we go. So index. Congratulations. Did I spell that right? I know I must have spelled that wrong. Congrats. You are a big cheese. There we go. So I know if I made it, right? And let's run that and see what happens. Right, so I'm going to make sure I've done everything right here. I have the admin controller. I'm going to enforce that policy. I have my startup that defines and adds the big cheese policy. I think I've got it all. Let's take a look. Here we go. Close that one. And, all right, so I'm logged in, and if I look at my account, I'm in the admin role. So if I go to /admin, I'm a big cheese, so I'm allowed access. What if I'm not allowed access? So I'm going to log out. Let's register a new user, and we will register Joe Bag of Donuts at jeffreyfritz.com, and his password is password.1234. Password1234. I made sure to put a point in there. There is a phenomenal spell checker add-on in the Visual Studio Marketplace. I need to check that out. Don't save that. So now I am Joe Bag of Donuts at jeffreyfritz.com, and now if I try and go to admin, it thinks I'm a big cheese. Why does it think I'm a big cheese? Let's take a look. I'm going to go into my thing here, and I don't have that role. So why does it think I'm a big cheese? I configured, I added that policy, right? Shouldn't it have enforced and said, sorry, you're not. Let me go back. Let's look at the admin controller just to make sure. Because I put allow anonymous on it. Alright, so let's get rid of that. Right, we want to actually enforce that you're not allowed. Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Restarted. You're right. So that's all fine. I thought I had to do something else there. Wow, lots of questions coming through. Eldorian, hey, good morning, JR. Finally got to catch a weekday live stream, although I'm late. I'm sure you went over this earlier, but is this tied to some kind of user database that you created or Active Directory or something like that? I'm using the default database when you choose to do application-only users, right? So this created a SQL database behind the scenes that's sitting there on disk that I'm able to connect into. And we've actually looked at a couple of the things in that database to kind of explore it. So here's my user, and he should not, right? Joe Bag of Donuts does not belong to a role. So if I try to go to the admin page, I'm access denied. Okay. Now there's ways to configure this and determine whether or not where and how to route folks out of that. So let's close some of these other pages. Good. All right. So Joe Bag of Donuts is not allowed access to it, but if I, of course, log out, no, not register. I want to log in, and I was Jeff at jeffreyfritz.com, and my super secure password, log in, and go to admin, and I'm allowed in because I'm a big cheese. And there you go, I see the folks. Yes, allow anonymous was what I had still hanging out there. The question from Cicero, do you think .NET Core will surpass Java in 5 to 10 years? So the interesting thing about Java and .NET is both of these are very, very well entrenched, right? There are organizations that have 10, 15 years of development already in these technologies. And I think what Java has going for it is, right, it's the language that you use on Android, right? It uses that Dalvik compiler, right? But it's effectively Java you're using on Android. So I think that's a good thing that it has going for it. I mean, if you're going to build Android and you're going to build native, you're using Java. And of course, there's all kinds of other places where you can use Java as well. So great platform, been around for a long time. It's evolved nicely. But I have some questions. I see some challenges around Oracle stewardship around Java. There's definitely some tension in organizations when they choose to use Java, and they see that Oracle is going around and suing people for how they're using Java. So that certainly can be a challenge. Conversely, Microsoft and .NET Core is they've basically promised we're not going to go around and sue people. We're still learning, but it's very, very fresh, very new, and it's still growing, it's still learning and building. And Chris makes a great point. It's good to have competing platforms because we're going to learn off of each other and we're going to push each other to grow and do new things. Yep, and Link functional programming streams in Java now. They're both learning from each other. But there are features that C# has been innovating and building, and my good friend Mads Torgersen, who leads the C# team and helps to design and build some of these new features in the language, they're being built there first and then picked up in other places. The async and await keywords, we've seen them in C# now for what, 4 or 5 years? But they're now being picked up by even JavaScript. So C#, there's a very active team at Microsoft innovating and building features on that. And that's not to be underestimated. That's a significant thing. And Java is picking up and learning from them. Generics, link, streams. So, and Chris has the link to the C# design there. If you have a chance to see Mads Torgersen and the language teams here from Microsoft, make sure you check them out. Brilliant people. Brilliant people. They really, they can really do some amazing things with their language. Oh, that's nice. My wife is driving back home, and her car is just randomly unlocking doors when stopped at stop signs and traffic lights. That's not a bug that you want. It's okay to have bugs in websites and things, but when you have a bug in your car, that's a problem. All right, so we created a policy. We're now enforcing that policy on this page. Not bad, easy to do. Let's talk about claims and how they fit into the mix now. So a claim is that security significant piece of information, right? It's something that's important to decide whether folks are authorized to access different things. So let's actually create a claim and assign it to our users here. So I believe, right? Where did my SQL? Where'd it go? View, SQL Cloud Objects Explorer. Where'd it go? I want to see my SQL. View, SQL Server Object Explorer. It's gone. No, really, it is. Am I missing something? Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. All right. No. I want you docked over here. Now I'm just getting click happy. Look at this. All right. So my claims are just, they're more or less strings hanging off of these things. And we've seen how, right, I have a role out here. Yes, yes, I don't want to design this. Right, it's my admin is just a string here in the database. So let's actually assign to our Jeff user that that he has a favorite cheese. Okay. So I'm going to need to get the user manager. So let's do that here. User manager, application user. All right, so now I have access to my user manager. Let's put some carriage returns in here so I can see it all on one screen. All right, so now I can say var Jeff equals user manager get get user async, right? And now I can pass in a principal, right? Now the principal, which contains the user ID claim, right? The principal is the information that helps to identify who that user is, right? It's a piece of the puzzle there. I thought there was another, no, because I want to not get user name. Ah, there we go. Okay. Find by name, find by login. That's going to be easy. Find by email is even better, right? Because I know the email is jeff@jeffreyfritz.com, and this is not where you would normally do this, right? I'm doing this just to kind of make it a little bit easier to go after here. Mags asks, is there a way to make the roles more type safe with enums, for example? Sure. You could generate an enum from the list of roles that are in the database, and then you could actually enforce against those. You could do that, right? But realistically, you wouldn't. I don't think you would want to have these role names. I would think you'd want to have these role names kind of hanging somewhere out there. As perhaps a property. So if I did, let me see, where was it? I was on application user, right? If I created a static class application roles, that's not how you spell static, Jeff, right? I could create, and I kind of like where you're going with this, Magus. Let me see if I can capture public static, no, const string admin equals admin, right? So now I've got that string that's actually being enforced and used inside my database, right? You could certainly write a little bit of code to generate this class, and then right over here, instead of saying role exists async admin, I could say application roles admin. And now instead of having that magic string floating around. Yeah, I like where you're going with that, DJ Vortex. You could use an enum as the basis with intermediate functions. Yes. You could do that as well. I'm going to, when I actually create these, application roles admin, and the same thing here. And now that magic string isn't being copied and pasted everywhere. And in fact, if I go up here, right, let's make sure this is referencing that. So then if that string changes for some reason, I'm changing it in one place throughout my application. I think that's a neat trick there. I like it. Awesome Boy 40,000. How good am I at Arduino? It's not something I do on a regular basis. I'm primarily a web guy. Folks like my friend Suze Hinton are really good at Arduino. She's got a number of Node.js libraries that make that really, really cool to do. Check her out. She is NoOpCat, cat with a K, on Twitch. But thanks for the question, Awesome Boy. I'm not going to be doing Arduino in the near term here. We're going to get into some
cognitive services later on here in February. I see this technique where people pass a lambda that maps something type safe to a string for those frameworks that demand strings. Neat. Okay, I get that. More coffee. All right. So now I'm kind of moving away from this, and then gosh, I could create another. Right, I could create another static class. Policies. Right. Let's just call it. That's not right. Application policy. Public const string big cheese equals, right? Not conster. There we go. Right, and then I can replace these. And then I'm only passing that around. Is that kind of where we're going here? What do you think? Cool idea for a Roslyn analyzer. Any method call on any of the auth classes should error if it is passing a string literal. That's interesting. Okay, yeah. Janescu, cognitive services with a chatbot. Yes, that's where I want to go, and I've got some folks that I'm lining up for that. Should be a lot of fun, and it should help us replace Nightbot. Don't tell Nightbot that, he'll get jealous. And somebody was suggesting we call it Fritzbot. I'm not opposed to that. All right, so we have this policy. Let's assign a claim now to Jeff, right? So this is actually the Jeff task to go get. We're going to need to do Jeff task.wait. Right, and then so now I'll actually have, right? I'll have that user object in there. So then we'll say Jeff task dot result dot, and then I can say, oh no. Is it user manager? I can add claims. Where is it? There it is. Add claims. So I'm going to add one claim, and I need to pass in my user, which will be Jeff task dot result, and then the claim that I'm passing in. Now a security claim, right? There it is. What do we got here? You can pass in ways to read it, but this is the one that I'm particularly looking for. String type, string value. And there's a set of, let me get rid of that namespace. I don't like that sitting there. Create my using statement. There are a set of kind of standard claim types that you can reference here, right? So there's claim types, and then you have these string constants here for all these different default claim types that you want to define. Given name, home phone, mobile phone, right? That might be important that someone has a mobile phone so they can do their two-factor authentication, right? Street address so that we know how to stalk them. Thumbprint, their web page, blah, 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 right? There's all kinds of things here that you can use as kind of the default ones that we suggest you may want to use. But you can also create your own string in here, and I'm going to call this favorite cheese. Okay, and you know what? Let's take and use, right? Let's use our little technique here, and application claims, public const string. I did that R again on the end. Favorite cheese equals, there it is. Oops, extra quotes. Fantastic, right? So now that same text is everywhere, and instead of having that, I can say application claims favorite cheese. So now I've defined that's my type, and it's just a string, right? Now why doesn't it like that? cannot convert from string to, well, right, I didn't add the value yet. And my favorite is provolone. And var claim task equals claim task dot wait. All right. So we're going to create that, and actually I don't even need, because I'm not going after the result there, I can just chain that wait right onto it like that. All right. That was easy. Right. There isn't an override here, but I can, nope, you have to give it a user. So now I'm going to create it. I'm going to specify that Jeff has provolone as his favorite cheese when this starts up. So we'll start this. LFC Boy 86, welcome. Thanks for the follow. I look forward to hearing from you in the chat room. All right. So we go back over here. There's, look, insert into ASP.NET user claims. Stop scrolling. Insert into ASP.NET user claims, claim type, claim value, user ID. It's creating it. Okay. And yep, I think we're good. So here I am Jeff at jeffreyfritz.com, and let's take a look at the database now. We should see that claim is assigned. So here's ASP.NET user claims, view data, ID, claim, claim value, and the user it's associated with. Come on. There it is. Right, so that's a GUID. Right, and the ID is an auto-incrementing. So we don't really care about the ID, but you can see that it's assigned provolone as my favorite cheese because, of course, in this application, that's important. Now, I can do things like in my policy, because I now have a claim that's associated, I can say, I want to make sure I don't do this a second time. Hang on. So I'm just going to comment that out. But that claim might be something that I create and save from my user profile, right? But I can say, where is it? Require claim, and then I can do several different things when I require the claim. I can actually require the presence of the claim. I can also require that it's a specific value, right? So I could do something like, right, config add policy called cheese lovers, and the policy says require claim claims application claims is where I stored that. Favorite cheese policy build. Okay, and you can actually chain these. Right, you can do that. Make it a little bit easier. Right? So now my cheese lovers policy has that you need to have a favorite cheese. And I can, of course, then create another policy called provolone fans. Policy require claim application claims favorite cheese, and the value, right, I can give it a collection of these, right, or an IEnumerable. So new provolone. And dot build. Okay, so different ways to kind of enforce this. Now, the last piece of this, right? So now I have policies that are out there that allow folks to do different things. Let me go over to my admin. Where'd my admin view go? Not that one. Back to the solution. In my admin view. Congrats, you're a big cheese. Let's actually inject the user. So, how do I inject the user? It's going to be @inject. Can I just say? I can't just say user. How do I receive? How did I receive the user? I'm forgetting this one. Let's see, user manager. Oh, get user async, and then it's passing that back. So let's do that. So I'm going to go back over to admin. Let's receive. Let's receive a user manager. User manager. Application user. There it is. And let's put some underneath that. Good. User manager equals user manager. So we save off a copy, create that as a read-only field. And now I'll just bring in that exact same thing. User manager, get user async. Oh, this isn't async up here. That. Fantastic. And I'll return that user. And in my index, I'm going to define the model using an @model directive. And my model is an application user. So now I should be able to say, model dot, nope, model. Right now I can look at all the different properties of that, but I want to take a look at their claims. Why am I getting a red squiggle there? Oh, forgot to put a task on it. Of course. So I've got the user. How do I get their claims? Right? Shouldn't I be able to go user manager dot. There it is. And then for my user. And then I'll get back a collection of those claims. So let's do that. You know what? We'll do this. Viewbag dot add. Right? A viewbag is just a collection. Yeah, viewbag. Oh, it's a dynamic property. That's what I'm thinking of. All right, so now I've got claims, which is a I list of claim objects. So I will go back to my index. And this is an I list of claim. All right, so let's. Why won't you control dot for me? Where'd it go? System security claims claim. Using system security, come on, claims claim. There we go. What don't you like about that? Oops. That's better. All right. Equals viewbag claims. Wrong controller. Yeah. Okay. So now I've got my collection of claims. So now I should be able to say model I should be able to just iterate over that list of claims. So let's just do an @for each item in claims. There it is. And let's put this in a definition list. And item dot, then there's all kinds of information about it, but the type is what I'm going after. @item dot value. And now I should be able to see information about the claims that this person has. View bag reminds me of the days of property bag. Yeah, they're very similar. Very similar. And the view bag is just a one-time object that's passed over with a bunch of dynamic properties that we can work with. So let's go to /admin. Oh no! Cannot convert threading task collection claim to I didn't properly await this so that I get the right stuff coming back. All right. So fairly easy to look at and interact with. All right, so I will go to /admin. And now I get favorite cheese is provolone. So I can see that claim. But when I'm actually on the page, I don't want to have to iterate over these claim things. I want to be able to just check and enforce how they work. Now here's where I need to reference the documents because I forget what the object is that you use to actually do that. It's ASP.NET Core, and I want to check a claim. Right, I want to verify that you actually have a claim. So here we go. So add policy, action result, but I actually want to check to see if you pass a policy. View-based authorization. Authorization service authorize async. That's what I'm thinking. So this bit right here. What I can do, so let me go back to that index and let's inject the authorization service. What I can do is I can come down here and say href equals provolone fans clubhouse. All right, I've just, someplace here that only provolone fans can go see. What I can do is I can say if authorization service, come on, give me the syntax completion there. I thought so. Authorization service needs to be on ASP.NET Core authorization. Let's put that in the mix here. All right, so there's authorization service. There we go. So I can say authorize and specify what I want to check against. Right? Why am I not getting a completion there? Right, user, and then whatever policy, and there's also, yeah, there's all kinds of ways that you can go with this. And it's not popping up for me here. And actually, I think I'm going to need to await that. Right, and my policy that I created for provolone fans is this one. So I should be able to do that and check to see if you're a member of this, then we'll let you do that. Authorization result to bool. That's right. So my authorization result. All right, let's take a look at what that is. Succeeded. Yes, I want to. If you have succeeded that authorization check, do this. Give me that hyperlink. All right, now because I made those changes in Razor, I should be able to just refresh my page and get the. Oh no. And I should be able to get that Provolone Fans Clubhouse. You are, gotta flip the text. You are not a provolone fan. Go away. And actually I could do that with a p tag, and it'd be a little bit friendlier. Refresh. There. Oh, now I get it, of course. Is it just me, or does this view seem to get a lot of responsibility? Wouldn't it make more sense to do this in the controller and expose a property on the view model instead? You can do that, right? You could expose that as a property on the view bag. I like to think that my views should do nothing more than ifs and fors. And doing an authorized check to determine whether to expose a link, I think, is a valid if. Especially when you build out menuing systems, right? You're going to want to limit, and you're going to want to build those appropriately, depending on what capabilities they have. But you make a very good point there. You may want to hide all your authorization checks somewhere else and pass those out through a view model. To each his own. Absolutely, you can do that. It's a question of managing responsibility. So we've created policies, we've created claims, and we're passing that information back and forth. So I think I'm keeping an eye on the time here. I'm at just about at time here. So I want to make sure that this sample is available so you can take a look at it, and you too can become a cheese lover. Maybe. So I want to make sure that I put this in my GitHub repository. I didn't get to the Stream Tools pull requests. We'll have to get to that next time. Let me just create a new repository real quick. A new repository. Come on, GitHub. There we go. And we will call this, right, security demo? Is that what I was calling this? Yes. Let's see. The simple demo showing policies, claims, showing policies, claims, and roles. All right, public. Sure, initialize it with a README. We'll use the Visual Studio git ignore. Thank you. I make everything MIT. Create that. I think I need to become a cheese lover. And you're welcome, Amanda. So I think this was a good example for us to go through here. I'm going to clone. Let's copy this. And I don't have a command prompt open yet. Security demo, git init, and git remote add origin, and I'm going to add that location. Git pull origin master, so I get, no, git pull origin master. I think it's -u to set up the tracking. No. Just git pull origin master. Start there. Okay. And I should have. Let me run PowerShell so I get all my goodies here. So there's my git ignore and my other stuff. Why does it think that stuff interesting? I'm going to add everything. I'm going to commit demo from Feb 1, 2018 stream. Cool. Git push, and it's going to come back and say, oh, you need to set the upstream origin master. Updates were rejected because the tip of my current branch is behind its remote counterpart. I thought I just did that. Why doesn't it like that? Interesting. Add, get, ignore, and get attributes. Use a force. You know what? I think, you know what? I already did that. It's not right, but yeah, you're right. I've got to invoke that Jedi mind trick and use the force. There it is. So now I've got my security demo, and you can take a look at what's up here. All right, and you should be able to see that right here, security demo, right off the root of my GitHub repository. So we went through, we talked about how these different pieces all work together, and we used the local database configuration to do this. And like I said, if you're using another security source, if it's Azure Active Directory, if it's Active Directory, instead of pulling these claims from the database, you're actually going to get real claim objects, complete claim objects with different information about how long they're valid, who issued those claims, coming from those other repositories. So things like Identity Server are very valuable to help you set up and manage a repository that's good to use for this interaction. Maybe we'll set up a second part to this demo where we'll set up an identity server and use that with our application and do that interaction at some point. But that's about all the time I have for today. Look at that, I hit the post. It is 9 o'clock on the button here on the West Coast. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining me today. I am here at CodeFellows. We've been listening to Carl Franklin's Music to Code By. This is, I believe this is Indigo is the name of this song. Big thanks to Carl for letting me use his music on the stream, of course. Check out his product at mtcb.pwop.com or musictoflowby.com. I'm going to sign off here. And OMG claims that you are a subscriber. I'm not quite sure what that means, Janescu. This video will be archived off. Of course, it'll be a VOD on Twitch and Mixer, but I'll push it over to YouTube a little bit later. Yeah, that's about all the time I have for today. Join me Saturday morning. I will be back home, back in the console, on the green screen in Philadelphia, getting all prepped, all psyched for my Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl. We'll review some of our pull requests then, and we'll talk about what we have scheduled for the week ahead, and yeah, some of the folks we're going to talk to. So, all right. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll see you next time. Take care.